The Springfield Hellcat RDP, the Rapid Defense Package. We shot it. We're going to take a look at it and talk about it here. It's got some interesting features. Springfield introduced the original Hellcat back in September of 2019 as a gun that'll hold 11 rounds in the flush magazine and 13 rounds in the slightly extended one. Or actually, you've got the flush magazine is what you're showing here with a pinky extension on it. And that upped the game a little bit from what Sig was offering at the time, and certainly made this a very viable entry into the compact or ultra compact defense pistol arena. When they introduced the original Hellcat, they also made available the Optic sight pistol, or the OSP. Came out around the same time, and you'd have to put your own optic on it, but it did have a removable plate in the back for the micro RMR, or micro red dot size. So this RDP was just released. It's essentially the same thing as the original Hellcat, with a couple of obvious and a couple of not so obvious differences. The frame, grip texture, etc. is really the same as the original Hellcat, complete with the one-slot Picatinny rail on the front. Texture, I can't get real excited about it. It does have texture in all the right places, including one for a good index point for the support thumb, or a good index point for trigger outside the, finger outside the trigger guard in a safety position. Not overly aggressive. Frankly, I'd like a little bit more bite to it, but I didn't have any trouble shooting this, so I guess I really can't complain. Springfield probably did their job on it. A couple of obvious differences, though. The HEX-Wasp 3.5 MOA dot is a special project by Springfield, and is available actually as a separate item on their website. But it does come on the RDP as you see it right here. So for the people at YouTube who monitor these and demonetize for anything mod, this gun, as you see it, is not previously modified. This is exactly how it came from the factory. No modifications at all on this gun. So the optic, I'll talk about that just very briefly. By the way, one thing I do like about it is the where it says the hex on the side has a wasp on the top and hex on this side. It's subtle. It doesn't jump out at you like the white lettering on the Holosun does. You know, that I complained about that back when we originally showcased that particular sight. I like the shape of the sight is interesting, and it does look like the shape of the construction is going to provide some good strength to it. Well, I'm still waiting till Sage Dynamics does his drop test on it. We aren't there yet. Glass lens, highly polished aluminum body. It uses the same RMSC footprint as the Shield RMSC, the Sig Romeo Zero, etc. And this one does take a CR 2032 battery. Of course, it's bottom mounted. A lot of people say, well, I don't want a bottom mounted battery because then I got to take the sight off. However, Springfield claims an outstanding 65,000 hours of battery life on this, and just my rough calculation says that's about 7 years and 4 months of battery life. Wow. So if you got to take your sight off every 7 years to change the battery, okay, you might want to do it before that, because I don't know about that 65,000 hours. That's quite a bit. This is always on technology. It's not a shake awake. It's just always on, according to Springfield literature. And it does have auto dimming, and the optic itself, if you take it off the gun, only weighs 7/10 of an ounce according to Springfield's literature. So it'll be interesting to see the longevity on this. I like the concept. Half MOA click adjustments on it, and it does have a built-in sight channel, although with this particular gun, we'll talk more about sights in a minute, you really don't need that sight channel. So again, I have high hopes for the HEX-Wasp optic. The second obvious difference is the muzzle device. This is a self-indexing compensator. Doesn't require shims, doesn't require special tools, and it's on a 3.8 inch threaded barrel that's melanite coated, and has standard 1/2 by 28 threads at the end. Now we're going to talk, as we get later on in the video, we'll talk about the specifics on removal and putting it back on. I may or may not demonstrate that. We'll see where it goes. There are other videos out there that demonstrate the removal, but I was a little skeptical about it, especially when I read Springfield's directions, but we'll get into that shortly. Some not so obvious differences on this from the original. This has what's called the Gen 2 trigger. Only difference I can really see on the Gen 2 trigger is the fact that the drop safety blade is wider on this one. It gives maybe a little bit better feel. This trigger does feel good all the way around. Now, I'll admit right now that I'm not a huge fan of the Springfield Hellcat. I'm probably one of the few that is not jumping for joy about the Hellcat, although this did seem to work okay for me. I can't really complain about the trigger. It just doesn't reach out and grab me, but it does run consistently at just under 5 pounds for this one. It's got a little bit of take-up. You can feel it, a little bit of internal movement there as it's defeating the internal safeties, and a crisp, clean brake, no over travel, which is, to me, impressive, and a very tactile, audible reset. Although, again, if you're shooting rapid fire, you're not worrying about reset anyway. That's only for precision shooting. But essentially, I guess the trigger is okay on this. For some reason, it just doesn't reach out and grab me, but it does work quite well. The other not so obvious item on this is something that was not offered on the original, and that is thumb safety. This is ambidextrous, and this is optional. You can order this with or without the thumb safety. My usual caution on this is if you get the thumb safety, I know that some people will say, well, I'm just going to leave it off all the time, but if this gets bumped on, although it's fairly stiff, it's not likely to get bumped on, but it could, and if it's bumped on, you pull this thing out and you try to use it when you need it and you can't do anything with it, you're in trouble. So anything with a thumb safety, you need to train yourself so that your thumb deactivates that safety automatically all the time. Even if you intend to carry it without the safety, your thumb should still work that. And there is enough meat on this safety too to make it work okay. Not like some thumb safeties where you really can't get a hold of it. This one you can, right-handed or left-handed. Yet it really, even though it's ambi, it really doesn't get in the way. It's not like a 1911 safety that has much more real estate to it, but it does work, and I can reactively thumb this off as I'm drawing the gun. This comes with tritium U-dot or U-notch sights that do pretty well co-witness with the dot. Quite impressed with them. It's only a tritium front. It's just got a white U-notch on the rear. And when I was shooting this, the sight didn't get in the way. It's not a real 1/3 co-witness. It's almost a full co-witness. Actually, the red dot centers right on top of that front sight, but I didn't notice the iron sights when I was using it, so they really didn't get in the way at all. Natural comparisons for this gun would be the Sig 365 and 365 XL, and we just happen to have both of those here. And the original Hellcat was relatively comparable to the 365. Now, if you ignore the compensator on the end, you'll see that overall length, they're just about the same. Sight radius, they're just about the same. And height, now this has the Sig, has the standard 10-round magazine in it. And by the way, this gun is unloaded, as is the Hellcat. The regular 365 is about the same height, just a hair shorter, but again, 10-round mag versus 11-round magazine. Put them side by side, and you can see the front of the grip is just about the same on both. The back is just a little bit shorter on the Sig 365 with one fewer round in it. 365 XL, on the other hand, has a longer slide in general, but not quite as long as the Hellcat slide with the compensator on it. So they are pretty close. Sight radius is going to be a little longer on the Sig, but again, if you're using the red dot, sight radius is not an issue. You'll notice that the sight on the Hellcat is moved a little forward, so you've got that standard, or at least the original Hellcat U-notch rear sight on it, whereas on the 365 XL, the factory sight is gone. The any co-witnessing has to be done with the iron notch that's built into this particular sight. If you get a micro red dot that doesn't have that notch, you've got no co-witnessing. So pretty close, the height. And again, this Sig has the 12-round magazine in it, so you got one more in this case, but it's also bigger than the Hellcat, so it does stick out a little more. So a lot to be said for the comparison on the Hellcat, favorably with the natural comparison, the Sig. Weights are also pretty close. The empty weight on the Springfield with the Optic on it right now, remember that Optic only weighs 7/10 of an ounce. So the weight with an empty magazine is 19.3 ounces. The regular 365 was 19.1 ounces, but again, you get one fewer shot out of it. And again, that didn't have an Optic on it. The XL with an Optic is 21.6. So you're 2 ounces heavier for the XL to get only one more round out of it. Loaded, the Springfield with 12 rounds of 124 grain ammo is 25.4 ounces. The regular 365 is just a hair lighter with one fewer ounce and no Optic at 23.9. The XL with one extra round, the 13 rounds, and the Optic on it is 27.2. So they're all pretty comparable, but somehow Springfield managed to pull off a slightly lighter gun than the XL. So the Compensator. There's a video on Springfield about how to remove and reinstall this. Doesn't require any tools. I already mentioned it doesn't require any shims. And I was skeptical. In fact, I watched the Springfield video and I was trying to figure out how to make this thing work. You have to hold the lever. There's a lever on the bottom of the Compensator. You have to hold that down until you do several rotations of the Compensator. By the way, they do say, obviously, check the gun to make sure it's empty, and they recommend taking the slide off the pistol when you do that, although it's not absolutely necessary, but it's just one more safety check. So you hold the lever down, rotate this anti-clockwise on those half of 28 threads, and until you get 3 or 4 notches or 3 or 4 revolutions on it, and then you can let go of the lever, take it off the rest of the way. Putting it back on, you have to hold the lever down, and you'll see inside the Compensator is the lever will actually stick up. You can see on the photo here where that lever does work its way up into the threaded area on the Compensator on the inside, or actually just beyond the threaded area. So as you're starting to thread it, you've got to get that protrusion out of the way. So you hold the lever, rotate the muzzle device a few turns, and then once you've got a few turns, you can continue to rotate it the rest of the way until it stops. Once it stops, you got to back it off a half a turn, because it stops when the protrusion on the lever inside hits the shoulder of the barrel. And in order to release that the tension on that lever, you have to back it off a half a turn. Then you hold the lever and rotate it about, or continue to rotate it. It comes out to about 3 more turns until it stops, and it's not going to be perfectly aligned. At that point, you release the lever and back it off until it clicks in place, because there's a notch in the barrel, as we'll show in a still photo here, where this lever locks into. So again, following the directions, it was confusing. Actually understanding how it all works made it pretty simple and pretty easy to follow. But does the Compensator really do any good? If you consider more loud noise off the sides, yeah, it does, because I stood to the side of this when the firearm guy was shooting it, and it's much louder to the side because of the blast from the Compensator going 3 directions, up and left and right. But does it really do any good? Now, when you got the port of the Compensator this far forward on the barrel, there's really not much pressure left behind the bullet to push down on the barrel. If the port was back here farther, it might have a little bit more effect. Right now, the only effect I see is, even though it's aluminum, it does have an extra fraction of an ounce of weight to it, so it gives you a little more weight to the front of the gun. Also might make it a little more difficult finding a holster for it. We shot this thing, of course, on the plates at 12 yards. We shot it at 25 yards. We shot it at 50 yards, and granted, people, I'm sure, chime into the comments why this is not a 50-yard gun, it's a defensive gun, but hey, it works well at 50 yards. And if a gun will work well at 50 yards, I know it's going to work at all the distances closer than that. As a civilian using a pistol for defense, you're not going to be shooting 50 yards, but again, I want to make sure that it will work wherever it needs to. And it ate everything that we fed it. I didn't feed it a lot of different ammunition, just because ammunition's getting a little bit tight right now. I'm not going to do any 1,000-round reviews, and I'm not putting hundreds of rounds through a gun. There are enough other channels out there that have run the Hellcat in general to, in fact, I think one did a 10,000 round test on it, and it's still running strong. So I have no doubt that it will carry on like that. So again, we ran the plates okay, and throughout this video, we've got some shooting footage in the background as we're going through it. It was accurate at 25 yards, knocking the center of the silhouette out, getting it back in. Took a couple of shots. I did miss on a couple, I believe. Again, running out to 20 or 50 yards. The 16-inch, the 12-inch, and even the 10-inch plates weren't a challenge at all. But then again, the red dot makes that so much easier. So my general impressions, and again, I'm probably one of the few people who are not jumping on the Hellcat bandwagon. So I can't say I'm overly impressed with the feel of the gun itself. It just doesn't grab me, but I do like the innovations, and I really got to give Springfield kudos for the Optic and for the Compensator, even though it doesn't do a lot of good, at least in my opinion it doesn't. But hey, they're thinking outside the box, and that's good. I like the option of a manual safety, but I also like the fact that you can get it without a manual safety if that's not where you are. The capacity on this gun is phenomenal. The trigger is okay. Again, if you like the feel of it, that's fine. I think there are better triggers out there, but there's also far worse. I was a little concerned initially about the size of the trigger guard, particularly with gloved hands. My shooting gloves go in there just fine, but I wouldn't want to try to use any winter type gloves in there. There wouldn't be any room for my finger, and I don't have really chubby fingers. They're just normal size. So I like the HEX-Wasp optic on it. I'm going to be really impressed if it lasts 7+ years for the battery. I'm not going to be testing it out that long. Now the big question comes at the price point, $899 as you see it right here with the Optic on it, and compare that to the Sig 365 XL. By the time you put an Optic on the 365 XL, you're in the same ballpark. So is it necessarily a better option? You know, it might be for some people. Just not for me. It's a nice gun, but again, I think for the price, there are better options out there. I just really like what Springfield has done in the way of innovations. All right, if you like this video, hey, we really do appreciate a thumbs up. Comments on this video are appreciated down below. And again, if you object to what we're saying, that's fine. Just keep it clean. This is a family channel. But by all means, comments are appreciated, good, bad, and otherwise. Comments on anything else to info@ridersrange.com. If you haven't already done so, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you know what's coming up. So that's probably a not so quick look at the new Springfield Hellcat RDP Rapid Defense Package with an Optic and a Compensator from the factory. Again, if this is your cup of tea, it's a nice gun. Thanks for stopping by.